Hello?
Okay, so this might be a really weird thought. What if you could erase from your mind that you'd ever seen a human body and then you saw one? Imagine how strange it would look. It'd be this really weird, gangly, awkward organism, and you'd think, why are all these parts where they are?
You're forgiven. Bye now.
D'abord mes contours. La silhouette.
Do you like quotes, Howard?
What do you mean?
Oh, you know, like famous quotes. There's one that goes,
I am inevitable.
And so are we. Welcome to the first episode. My name is George, I'm from Austria,
I'm Krit from the UK.
And I'm Bia from Portugal.
and we are €3 per movie.
Every episode, we will pick 3 movies that relate to each other in some fashion, be it directors, writers, an influence, or something else, and we will discuss and review each film selected. Sometimes it will be a new movie and 2 that are older, or it may be 3 completely random which are selected by each of us with a common theme. Spoilers are to be expected after a spoiler-free segment, and we will even sprinkle in some trivia surrounding the production and reception. At the end of every episode, we will tell you the 3 movies we will discuss next time if you wish to watch and prepare.
So, in this first episode, we will go in a different route from the standard format. We will be going over a variety of questions that will serve as an introduction and reveal a little bit more about our tastes. And, of course, for you, the listener, to judge how much cinephile blood runs within us.
Our first question we prepared for the day is the very first film memory everyone here can recall. For me personally, that would be Finding Nemo, the Pixar movie, when I watched it for the very first time as a kid in an open-air cinema.
Damn. You were young.
I was really young. I gotta have been like 5 or 6.
What year was Finding Nemo? 2001?
I
No,
think 2000.
2002 or 4, maybe. Right?
You guys are old, man.
I'm sorry for my age, okay?
So Finding Nemo was released in 2003. Probably didn't release here till 2004 when it released here in the open air cinema. The open air cinema is pretty special actually. It's surrounded with these medieval walls, basically the original walls from when it was a literal castle. And
Yeah.
you have this giant field in the middle of it, and just these corners with a tower at the end of it and one giant screen on it. And people just gather each summer to watch a bunch of movies. It has like a selection of the important movies, if you want to call them that, of the last year. So it's always a little bit late. So I think I watched Finding Nemo like 2004. Would
So
make
was
sense.
was it your first experience in the cinema or just like your first movie memory in general?
It might have been my first experience in the cinema. It's definitely the oldest I can recall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As a kid, I watched a few things like on television, as kids do, but that's like the very distinct memory, just running around, especially in like the the break.
Yeah.
There's a middle break in the open air cinema, and in that break, running around with a few friends, and then all gathering and sitting down to watch this movie together felt like such a magical thing. Probably also because like you're still really young, and at that age, staying up late is something super special, and obviously open air
Right.
cinemas can't run during the day. That was all a very much a magical moment for me.
Is it still open? Like, could I go
Yeah.
there today?
Yeah, each
This is
summer.
what I'm saying. Is this... So this was a castle?
Yes.
Like it used to be a castle?
Those are like the castle walls, basically. They used to be the outer walls that barricaded the city. City is too much. It's like a small town.
My local cinema used to be a bowling alley. So... I think... I don't think we're pretty equal in that. I'm not happy about that, to be honest. I want a castle cinema in
I want a castle cinema as well.
I want a castle cinema. That sounds so sick.
Yeah, I'm very aware that growing up like this was very fortunate for like getting into movies.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything specifically about Finding Nemo? Like, because obviously the movie is Finding Nemo, but do you remember the experience of seeing it or the movie more?
I think the experience is a bit hard to judge now because, like, in the recent years, I have rewatched it. So I could recall pretty much most of the plot, but I don't know how much of that would be fair to assign to, like, the initial viewing.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, when rewatching it, I think last year or 2 years ago, I remember that all of the time I was like, oh yeah, and that happened, and that happened. So I definitely had some memories in there. I remembered the tortoise, turtle. What's the water one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
turtle,
turtles. Yeah.
The turtles. Yeah, I distinctly remembered those.
Yeah, where they're like just spitting bro left and right. It's
Yeah,
super
yeah.
chill. Yeah, I love that part of the movie.
Oh, and I remember the whole joke with the address in Sydney. How she Wallaby Street something Sydney. P. Sherman, Wallaby Street, Sydney. And there I got it.
I do find it kind of funny that you two have both kids' films. You know, because obviously we all have each other's answers to these questions. And I distinctly do not.
Yeah.
Like,
What's
right,
up
so-
about that?
I was gonna ask Beer about hers, but okay, we can go for mine. So yeah, mine is with the film Boogeyman 3, which is such a specific B movie. Like, nobody has seen this film. Nobody cares about this film. But when I was about, I don't know, I'd say about 5 or 6, about when you start having memories that you keep forever, about whatever age that is.
Mhm.
I grew up with like a lot of siblings. I have about like 12 siblings. It was very hard for my mom to keep track of all of us. So I would stay up super late. And as long as I was quiet enough, you know, no one would really notice. And one time, my brothers and sisters, well, some of them, were watching a horror film in like their room. And I snuck in there to go and watch it with them because I thought I was big and brave. And that film was Boogeyman 3. And they was watching this scene specifically, right? But it's of this elevator scene, and there's this girl and she's covered in blood and she's being arrested or whatever. And the boogeyman like just kind of shows up upside down in the elevator and then snatches her. And it terrified me when I was a kid, and I ran out the room screaming. And I got in massive trouble for staying up so late, and then also for trying to watch a horror movie. That's when I decided I was never going to watch horror movies again. And I was an idiot because, as it turns out, that's my favorite genre of film. So complete 180 from when I was like 6 years old. But yeah, that's my first ever memory of film, and it's scarring. I still think about it.
That's super interesting. I guess we can circle back to that when we talk about the favorite genres later.
Yeah.
But I had a very sheltered childhood. I grew up as the oldest child, so I also had like no opportunities like that. My parents are not into horror at all. And the result of that is that I actually never had that infamous experience of watching a horror film way too young, as most movie fans apparently do. I wonder if I broke a code or something. It seems like everyone needs to have that one traumatizing film memory
Apparently,
as a kid.
yeah. Apparently they do, yeah.
I missed out on that.
It really scarred me. Like because you know we will circle back to like favorite genres and whatever, but even though horror is my favorite genre, and horror movies don't like scare me or anything anymore, I don't watch that film. I have stayed so clear of that film. I've seen that one scene and that one scene only, and I never plan to watch the rest of that film.
That's fascinating. I wonder if I think you would probably lose all of that fear if you just watched it once and realized now that it's actually not a scary movie compared to a lot of.
It's a shame we will never find out.
All right.
You know what? But you guys were talking about trauma and fears, and my first memory concerning like cinema and movie experiences was actually of my father just falling asleep in the cinema, you know, and that was traumatizing because now it just taught me that it didn't teach me, it just molded me, you know, into thinking that if I'm watching a movie with someone, you cannot be on your phone. You cannot like turn away. You cannot fall asleep. It's ruined if you do. So yeah, that was very traumatizing in that way. So I watched Harry Potter. I can't remember exactly if it was Philosopher's Stone or Chamber of Secrets. As you might imagine it, it was a very important experience for me as a child. Like the magical scenes, the world. I was in complete awe, just seeing these characters just throwing out spells, and it was very amazing to me. And I look to the left of me and my father is his eyes are closed, and I'm like, bro, I'm having like a defining experience here. And you're not watching it. I want to share my happiness. And that's what's most important to me with movies, is sharing, in a way, an experience. Um, Even have like thoughts about the movie after and talking about it. And I couldn't do that with my father because he just fell asleep and he took us home. And I don't remember the ride, of course, because I was little, but yeah, just don't fall asleep, guys.
There is something quite sweet about that though, right? Like watching a film and your dad falling asleep. I don't know, it seems kind of nice.
You think?
Because here's the thing. This is how I interpret that situation though, right? He's fell asleep, so he clearly doesn't want to be there. But he's gone out his way to give you an experience, He doesn't want to be there, but he's drove you there so you could experience it, and then he snoozed so he could just, forget about it or whatever. And then,
Mhm.
he's welcome and he's drove you home, and I reckon he was just trying to do something nice for you. And all you've done is say he's traumatized you, and I think we need to give Dad a little more credit.
Yeah, he was probably tired, from working, and I remember
Yeah.
specifically that we went like in at a night like 9 p.m. screening. And yeah, like my father is a very special person in the way that he was the first, or probably the only person in my family besides me that has a passion for movies. And he was the first to just take me to the cinema and show me the movies that he enjoyed, like Philadelphia, I think. There's a couple more, like those action movies, like Die Hard. He loved those, but I could see the love and the interest that he showed for these movies, and it, in a way, inspired me to just also think about movies in that way. So, yeah.
I had a similar experience with my dad. He took me to go and watch Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and he didn't fall asleep. He stayed awake the entire time, and
Good
then
one,
he
Dad.
didn't he didn't say anything the entire time. And then we got into the car, and I was pretty young at the time, and I got into the car, and he looked at me, and he was like, "Well, that was shit."
Oh no!
And I was like, "Thanks, Dad. I really enjoyed it, but cheers." Because, can I do spoilers for Half-Blood Prince?
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert for like a 15-year-old film. It's the one where Dumbledore dies, right? It's the one where
Yeah.
Snape kills Dumbledore. So I'm emotionally wrecked. I'm like exhausted from crying. And then I get in the car, my dad's like, "Well, that movie was fucking shit." I was like, "Cheers, Dad," as I'm wiping tears from my eyes.
Since we're already on the topic of childhood scars, when I was a child, I also got into the first Harry Potter movies. I definitely didn't see them in the cinema, but at home I had the DVD, and I probably haven't played any DVD in my life that many times as I did with The Philosopher's Stone. I remember that I started reading the books because I couldn't wait for the movies to come out. And I I remember talking to a few other kids at my school, and one straight up to my face spoiled me what would happen in Philosopher's Stone. And I thought it was so absurd that
No.
that could never happen, that when I actually got to that point and it got closer, I was like, oh my god, he was really spoiling me. He wasn't making a joke.
No, that's
Yeah.
that's the number one sin, okay?
Yeah.
It's the number one sin when it comes to watching movies. As you guys know, I don't really watch trailers. I feel like they spoil the fun for me.
Yeah, I don't really either.
We're all on a page there.
To receive a spoiler, it's death, actually. Death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to circle back to this whole spoiler thing because we're going to talk about a film later on, and I think this kind of plays into a point I have about a film later on.
I guess that brings us to the next question. A film genre you love and why? Krit, you want to start us off?
The film genre I love and why is horror. Now, despite my first answer of the first question, Boogeyman 3, which literally gives me PTSD.
You wanted more.
What? by the time I got to about 17, I literally recently just did a video about why I love horror, so I'm trying not to just completely redo that video here now. But when I was about 17, I found my love for the live action Scooby-Doo films, which I liked when I was a kid, and when I was 17 I was like, these films are like actually sick. And Matthew Lillard as Shaggy was my favorite character, right? I thought he was an especially good actor. So I was like, I want to watch some more Matthew Lillard things. So I watched Scream, since, you know, it was his next biggest film or whatever. And I was like, wow, this film's like good. And I didn't know like horror films could be that good, because I was a teenager when all the Conjuring films and stuff were like huge and they were the biggest thing in horror. And I just thought they were like a mess. You know, they were overly lenient on jump scares and the stories weren't really that good. It was just, yeah, ugh. So I didn't think that, you know, horror movies could be good. And then I watched Scream and it changed my life. And I was like, fuck, man, the horror movies are sick. So I, you know, made it a mission to watch as many horror films as I could. And then one day I watched The Thing, 1983's John Carpenter's The Thing. One of my favorite movies of all time, and it just solidified why I love horror. It's so beautiful in a way that no other genre, perhaps other than maybe sci-fi and romance, can be. Because the people that make horror love horror, right? They absolutely adore horror films. That's why, you know, someone that directs some romance films will also make a drama every now and then, or they might even make an action film, because they just like making movies. But horror directors usually only ever make horror films because it's just a medium that they love.
Yeah, it's like culty, kind of.
Yeah, and you feel that passion, always.
Yeah.
You know, when you watch a Wes Craven film, especially the Scream films, you feel the passion for horror films in them. When you watch a John Carpenter film, you can feel his passion for that film, right, for that medium. And I think The Thing is his best example of doing that. And also, I just love the nature of the way they're made. You know, they're cheaply made. You know, one of the best horror films of the 2010s is Creep, to me anyway. I think it's one of the most uniquely terrifying films ever made. And it was made for less than $1,000 with a crew of 2 people. You know, they both acted in it. They were both the cameramen. They were both the writers. They directed it. Like, it was all them.
Is it like found footage, or because I've never heard about that one?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a found footage film. Came out in 2014. You should totally watch it. There's a second one as well that's really great. And yeah, just that nature about it. Like 10 Cloverfield Lane cost, I think, around 13 million to make, and it made 110 at the box office. They can do so much with so little because they're so creative.
True.
And people, you know, when good horror works, it works. People eat it up and they lap it up. Last year was a really good example of that. You know, with Barbarian and X and Pearl, people really loved horror last year because horror was really good. So yeah, that's yeah. I would love to talk about horror all day, but you know, other people are here, so I guess I'll let one of you talk now.
Just to quickly, a few things. The Thing was 1982. Just a little correction here.
Damn, got my ass.
Got you. I am somewhat of an horror agnostic. Like I earlier mentioned, I grew up watching none of it at all. And similar to you growing up, it always felt like that even horror fans talked trash about horror, how it is so often uncreative and just filmed with jump scares, that
Yeah.
the first step to get into the genre is, I think, a bigger hurdle than many other genres.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point, I definitely have my fair share of experiences. A lot of the classics, obviously, 1980s era, The Thing, The Fly. I particularly love everything practical, so all the practical
Yes,
effects of
yeah,
that
yeah.
era are just amazing.
Very charming. It's interesting because when I first watched like horror movies, I started with those that would creep up on my Tumblr page, okay? And it would be like the most unknown slasher gory type of movies. And I was a big fan of Paranormal Activity. I would
Mhm.
suck it
The
up.
first one's really good, to be fair.
Yeah. I stopped 3 movies in. I think they continue. I don't know how many there are now.
There's a lot. There's like
Probably.
6, I think, or 7. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, but I was genuinely frightened by the movies. And even if they're bad, they can still like provoke something in the viewer. And I think that's the beautiful thing about horror. It's very, I don't want to say easy, but the ways with which you can just evoke those emotions are many, and the ways to get there can be achieved very creatively. And I think it's always a view, to be witnessing that type of cinema. And that's why I loved horror movies back then. Recently now, I'm more into the movies that are debatable if they're horror or not. Your Robert Eggert movies, or even Ari Aster.
Right, I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm into that now. Now I'm fancy. But back then
Oh,
I would eat everything up. Yeah.
someone's a bit too good for normal horror now, are they?
Yeah.
I'm a little on Beer's side there. I have like mixed feelings on some of the last year's movies you mentioned, so Barbarian and X, for example. I enjoyed them to a degree, but I feel like I still lack a little bit of that pre-knowledge about the genre to really appreciate all the nuances there. What I do, however, totally enjoy are like those, as B already mentioned, Ari Aster's, or more specifically in the last years, what the French did. So A Climax by Gaspar Noé, or Titan and Raw by Julia Ducournau. I think those were just fantastic. And if you gotta assign a genre to that, then I guess it is horror. But it's not like the picture you have in mind when you
Yeah.
think of horror.
Well, I've had this conversation a lot in the recent days, and I have no idea why. But I think for some reason people have such a limited scope on the genre horror of what they would define as horror. Like I hear a lot of times people going like, it's not really a horror, it's more of a thriller. And that doesn't really like register too well to me, because I see thrillers as just kind of a subgenre of horror. Like
Yeah.
Psycho is like a slasher, sure, but it's also like a thriller, A horror movie isn't designed to make your fucking skin crawl. It's not designed to terrify you.
Mhm.
The Thing, in my opinion anyway, isn't terrifying,
I think it is, to a degree.
but it is quite clearly horror. I mean, yeah, obviously it is.
More like thematically horror, not like the feelings that evoke in you.
But
horror.
yeah, it's not like you're not watching it, behind a cushion, like, with your jaw chattering like a cartoon. Like you can just sit there and watch The Thing, But you would never go, it's not really horror, is it? Because of course it is.
Yeah.
I think horror is a way more versatile genre than people give it credit for. And when it is being versatile, people try to take it away from horror, which I think is completely unfair, because that's kind of the attitude that, the Academy has towards horror. That's why nothing ever really gets nominated. Nope recently got nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. but it's only kind of horror because the second half of that film is action.
Nope.
You know?
I don't think
Yeah,
Nope,
Nope.
got nominated for Best Picture.
Did it not?
I
Oh,
think
I
even
was under
Nope
the
got
impression it was.
scuffed.
Scuffed, yeah.
Damn.
It was a great horror year. You would think that Nope could get one, but
Yeah, it's kind of weird that it didn't.
Oh, wow, yeah, no, you're right. I really thought
Yeah.
it did. I must have seen it in a different category or something, but yeah, no, that's crazy. I thought it did. But yeah, like the Academy has such like a snobby way to look at horror films.
Mhm.
And I especially in the case of Ari Aster's horror films, you know, Hereditary and Midsummer, there's been a term, right, that I hate, and I didn't really want to bring it up, but it's coming up now.
Oh no.
It's elevated horror.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot stand that term
Yeah. It
because
just
it's
brings-
like
yeah.
it's such a pretentious term to be like, oh, I watch horror movies that are actually good, that are about something. You know, it's so shut up.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Horror movies have always been about stuff. Always. You know, if you want to take it back to, say, The Fly, you know, that you mentioned earlier, The Fly was a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic.
Oh,
But, you know, that metaphor can easily get lost on somebody,
if they're not aware, yeah.
you know, because it's not really shoving it in your face. But they've always been about something. And yeah, I just think it's quite the term elevated horror really irritates me because it feels like someone's trying to put themselves above horror films, which, you know, I absolutely despise.
Yeah, bringing the other entries down to a level where they shouldn't be considered real cinema. And yeah,
That's what it feels like. It's like going, oh yeah, Midsummer's cinema to me, but
yeah.
you know, X, you know, from last year, that's not cinema.
I think that's often also just like a general problems with like the broader idea of genre, especially like in the last few years. Movies have been less and less specifically assignable to a genre.
A lot is less defined, yeah.
A super basic example, but if you look at Parasite, it has like elements of probably 10 different genres in there. So what you're really gonna call it, and people then slap drama on it because drama just fits every time. And I think that it even like the sentiment that elevated horror has more depth to it wouldn't really work, because even the example I pointed out earlier, climax always gets assigned to this genre, this elevated horror. But I wouldn't even say that climax has more subtext than Barbarian. It's, for example.
No, it doesn't.
I wouldn't
Not
say
at
that,
all. Not at all.
It's simply just people going, well, I like this one, so I've got to come up with a term to excuse it, so people don't think that I like those crappy horror films.
I gotta separate myself from the crowd. The peasants.
You know, they can't admit that they like a horror film.
I think that's just a weird genre they created for any movie that vaguely terrifies you. That's the goal of the movie, but at the same time it doesn't use like the classical horror tropes, and therefore people felt the need to identify it as something different.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. I think people think that horror films are there strictly to terrify you, and if they don't do that, then they've not succeeded at being a horror film. Which is crazy as well, because to bring up, like comedy horror, I saw so many people watch Megan recently, and yeah, and they were saying stuff like, it made me laugh the whole time. You know, and they were saying it as like to the film's detriment. You know, like, it's not that scary, it made me laugh the whole time.
Yeah, how dare that
And,
movie
like,
make you laugh?
Yeah, it's supposed to. The silly dance is supposed to be funny. They didn't do that dance and then think, oh yeah, that's really gonna scare some people. Like, the whole thing was to make you laugh, dude. It's called comedy horror. I actually had this argument with my brother, because my brother was trying to say that comedy horror just isn't a really well-designed genre blend. And that's crazy to me, because say, The Evil Dead 2, it's one of the best movies ever made. Right? I think we can all agree The Evil Dead 2 is pretty
I haven't
much
watched
I,
it.
a
I love it.
masterpiece.
I don't know if I would call it one of the best of all time, but I totally love it. I have it
At
as a
least in the
steelbook.
horror genre.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
definitely. Horror comedy, it's like peak.
Yeah, and it's a comedy horror, and it's almost a masterpiece at it.
Mhm.
So I don't know how people can say stuff like, "Oh yeah, it made me laugh, therefore it's not a good horror film," when stuff like The Evil Dead 2 exists. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I've seen that happen more and more recently, and I think that's a big problem because of the internet. Because someone will say that, and then someone will read it and go, "Yeah, that sounds right," and then that's just they adopt that opinion. Whereas back in the day, it was a bit harder to mold your opinion onto people.
I guess to a degree, there were probably instances where like friend groups declared a
Oh,
movie
obviously,
as a
yeah.
masterpiece and the general audiences disagreed, but they talked themselves into it.
But yeah, it's much easier to do that on a mass scale at this point.
But yeah,
Definitely, yeah.
beware of the Twitter.
Beer, what's your genre?
So my genre, I was actually torn between two. I was thinking of drama, and I ended up just going with sci-fi.
You are correct.
Am I?
Yeah.
Because sci-fi has this plethora of possibilities that are associated with it. You can use like very futuristic elements to portray humanity's most important virtues or their most important shortcomings, and all of these like just presented in a way that it makes us dream about a future, or it makes us fear of a future. It's always very interesting to me, especially because it will always bring back the fact that we are human at the end of the day, and that our nature, our problems are always going to be, we can always fix them. We can always, cure a disease or make a contraption that's going to enhance our evolution. But our real problems, societal problems, will probably always be there. The way that we see ourselves internally, the way that the questions that we have about the universe can be answered in a movie, but at the same time, it will always makes us think about our philosophy and the nature of what makes us human. Yeah.
One thing I will say about sci-fi is I think it's one of the best like base genres, because you can make pretty much any type of other genre film
Yeah.
in sci-fi. You can have a sci-fi drama or a
Sci-fi
sci-fi
horror,
romance, sci-fi horror. It's really adaptable.
Yeah.
It's really adaptable. And some of my favorite films in every genre are also sci-fi films. Some of my favorite romance films are sci-fi romance, and I'm a big fan of Star Wars. So, and obviously we know how adaptable just the universe of Star Wars is.
Yeah. There's a variety of
Limitless options.
yeah, limitless options, the way it can be implemented. It's just you're talking about sci-fi romances, and I just remembered her, and it's just
Oh,
the sci-fi aspect is very subtle.
yeah.
It's close to us, right? Like these types of relationships with people that we can't see. Probably in a few years with ChatGPT, we will have relationships with AI. So yeah, it's a very important movie for me. I need to rewatch it ASAP because it's been on my mind.
Her is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
I love that film.
I was also going to bring up Her and Eternal Sunshine in a very related manner. I love sci-fi specifically when it's used more as a tool set.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of as Krit already pointed out, a lot of my favorite movies are also considered sci-fi movies to a degree. Sci-fi always works best when there's like this one core idea, I feel like, that just changes a few rule sets, if you want to call them, about the way we live.
Yes, I get
Like
what you mean.
Eternal Sunshine or Her would be great examples for that. And the resulting conflict or problem solving resulting from those new struggles, those new rule sets to live by, always serve for a greater truth, I guess, about how humans interact, about how we make decisions.
I also think sci-fi works so well as a vehicle for other genres because it puts across the message even more that a lot of human experiences are I'm trying to think of the word. They're universal.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
like you can put a human experience of love or heartbreak into a sci-fi film and it's just as, real, and you feel it just as much as if it was based, on Earth in the modern day.
Arguably, you could even consider, if we take the example of Her, slight spoilers, you'll find that out in like the first 10 minutes, but Joachim Phoenix is falling in love with a computer voice. So taking this concept of stripping away a body from the love interest, if you want to call it that, really tells, I feel like, even more about how the emotions work, how it feels, how it is to fall in love, if the concept of love is just minimalized to a voice only.
Yeah. It just makes us think about like the things that makes us human, like the details.
Another film that does that specific thing really well is also Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Oh, true, yeah.
Between Ryan Gosling's character and Anna de Armas's character. I'm forgetting the character name, so I'll just use the actors. But yeah, like she's quite obviously, even though she does technically have a body, she's quite obviously artificial.
Yeah.
And he does, have feelings for her, but then you've got to think about how valid those feelings are.
On her end, yeah. Because she's a product in that case as well. And yeah.
Yeah.
There's many more layers in that case. Additional layers, so
Yeah, in comparison to her, where she's
Mhm.
not like her purpose is not to make you fall in love with her. So yeah, that's different.
I also think, by the way, that sci-fi is brilliant because its life is very long, probably longer than any, genre, just because it can't get old because of the limitless options. Sci-fi in the 60s and sci-fi now are completely different, but they're still distinctly sci-fi.
Mhm.
And they're still pumping out immaculate films within the genre. And, to go back to say Star Wars, how long, like 40 odd years Star Wars has been going. And it doesn't seem to be ending.
Yeah, with the shows and
Because there's just limitless possibilities even within that.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't mind a new Blade Runner film, to be honest. Everything is so rife with potential within sci-fi. Every world they create, the alien world from obviously Ridley Scott's Alien. That world is so rife with potential. Say like Prometheus, where, they completely go off xenomorphs for basically the entire film because, they're looking for the creators and stuff like that. It's a complete side story away from the main villain of that genre, and it works still.
I think sci-fi is also so useful to just entertain our curiosity about the world, right? And the universe and the deep philosophical questions that we have within us. For example, Avatar, the last one, the Avatar 2, The Way of Water. I think it has like this potential to change minds or make people see nature in a different way and the way that we treat it, with the relationships that were portrayed in the movie. I don't want to spoiler, but with certain parts of the world of Pandora. And I think cinema has this power to just make you feel something you didn't feel before and make you think about things in a different way. And sci-fi is great for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up The Way of Water, by the way, because I think that movie fucks. That movie is so good.
Yeah.
I guess that brings us to my answer. I did a bit of a cop-out, but as we already established, we're not too keen on strict genre definitions anyways.
I think it counts.
My answer
Yeah.
was stop motion.
Beautiful.
I'm a big fan, as I already earlier mentioned, of anything practical. And when I see a few foxes running around and you can see every single fingerprint of the animators in their fur, then I'm just happy.
Yeah. Mwah. Stop motion is so beautiful. I don't think there's a single genre or subgenre, if you want to call this whatever, that has as good a track record as stop motion does. Like, you struggle to find a bad stop motion film.
I think one of the reasons why stop motion has such a good track record is the huge barrier of entry, where it just takes so much time to create an animated movie. Like in the last year, we got Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio,
Yes.
which was magnificent. We also got Wendell vs. Wild by Henry Selick, another great stop motion movie.
Hey, well,
And
you corrected me earlier about the thing, so I'm about to correct you now. It's Wendell and Wild, not Wendell versus
Oh,
Wild.
yeah,
Take that.
you're totally right. You're totally right.
Damn. Are we counting?
And I don't know about how Wendell and Wild took in the making, but as far as I know, the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio has been in the making for 10 years now.
I think I read that Wendell and Wild's took about 7 years
Yeah,
to make.
yeah. So there's this giant barrier. They rarely make money, and I think you actually have to have a really solid project already at your hand for any studio to go ahead and fund it. So there's kind of this inherent quality control within the genre, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it's risky. I remember the last stop motion movie I watched. I was a little bit traumatized, which was The Wolf House. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
La
yeah. The Wolf
Casa
House
Lobo.
is a weird specific example because it's like actually combining multiple animation styles
Yeah.
and is super indie and super. It's such an arthouse animation movie, but it's very unique and
It is.
technically insanely well done. Maybe we'll talk about it one day.
I hope
One
so.
day.
I would actually love to revisit the movie. I think there's a lot to pick at it. Next question.
Okay, yeah, next question.
Sure.
What is a movie that should be, in your opinion, obliterated from the letterbox top 250?
I can start off with one that I know Bia just watched for this episode, or tried to, and kind of
I
failed
tried
at the
to.
end. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Brazilian movie. It's very high up the Letterboxd list. I think it's actually like number 5, around about there. A Dog's Will.
I think I checked it. It's third. Let me check again.
A Dog's Will is a Brazilian comedy that I have never heard anything positive about by anyone who doesn't speak Portuguese. So this is a very weird instance where it's even difficult to get the movie with any English subtitles. It seems like there haven't been a lot of prints outside of Brazil. And the general agreement within Brazil seems to be that this is the greatest comedy of all time. They seem to rate it with 5 stars into oblivion, whilst the rest of the world is not in on the joke. I finally found a source after like 2 years of looking. It took me ages to get to this movie.
It was difficult for me as well.
I'm baffled. I assumed there was a lot of lost in translation stuff, which would make for a great discussion on a separate occasion, I guess, because I think there's a lot to get into there. But Bia, you watched it and you didn't seem to enjoy it that much. You speak Portuguese. Where's the problem?
Yeah, I tried to find some subtitles in English so I could know like what you guys were getting and what the Portuguese people were, understanding. Portuguese speaking people, of course, because Brazilian, Portugal, whatever. I was at first surprised by the genre because as you know, I didn't even read the synopsis. I didn't know what it was. I didn't read anything about it. I just knew it was the highest rated movie like ever, from Brazil. And I started watching it, and I was like, oh, this is a comedy, interesting. And it's played in a way that it looks a lot like a novella, so a soap opera
Mhm.
for me. The type of comedy, it's very fast paced. At times I laughed, okay? I was enjoying some of the jokes, some of the scenery. It's well crafted in a way, but I just couldn't connect. I know they're like trying to talk about religion and the hypocrisy of the church, and the way that men treat women in marriages, all of that, but it just didn't connect. And the quality of it overall, it didn't feel like it justifies the place that it has in the on that list. I just couldn't I just couldn't understand. I'm with you, Zaid, because as I said, I was watching it in Portuguese. It was surprisingly easy to understand because sometimes, even from Portuguese from Portugal to Brazilian Portuguese, there's some words or expressions that get lost in translation. But for me, yeah, I was a little bit bored. I was bored most of the times, and I couldn't finish the movie. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
To me, actually, the last 30 minutes, so round about that, what you're missing might be my favorite part. I have some
mm,
memories of those at least. That was ingrained in my mind. But it's like
yeah,
it's just generally at best a serviceable movie to me, and with that in mind and the knowledge whilst watching it that, as you pointed out, it is number 3 on Letterboxd. With that knowledge in mind,
yeah,
it is kind of a frustrating watch to feel like why? Because even if
why?
you
Yeah,
look at it from a perspective of okay, Brazil maybe just wanted to be represented, high up the list. They have City of God
yeah. But I think this one appeases to the most number of people.
within Brazil. You
Uh,
mean?
I think it has,
Hmm.
yeah, within Brazil, the type of comedy, it's very typical. So I grew up watching Brazilian soap operas, the so-called novelas, and it's very similar, the type of comedy presented in this movie. It's maybe that. And I think there's an element of nostalgia that might be at play here, from people that probably watched it when they were younger, and now it's, highly rated.
Now they install Letterboxd and they see it high up the list and they were like, "Oh yeah, that was a great movie."
Yeah, that was a great movie. Yeah, I think this is based on a book, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you noticed, but it played a lot like a theater play. It was very theatrical.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like the type of story that you would study in high school. In fact, there's a similar story um, in that we study in Portugal. So yeah, I think that might be it. It's just like a nostalgia factor.
crazy.
I was searching for a movie to trash on the top on the letterbox top 50, not top 50, top 250, and I was surprised to see this one there. So RRR. Everyone loved it when it came out. It was, and it still is, revered, very hyped. I think it's on the 243rd position in the list, so not very high.
People are gonna fulfill your dreams very soon then.
Yeah, it's probably going to come off the list
Soonish.
soon. Yeah, once the popularity fades out. So this is not, from my understanding, this is not a Bollywood movie.
No.
But I would, like, when I was watching it, I didn't have that information, so I was considering this movie to be my first Bollywood watch, and I was excited, and it was very fun. Okay, the action scenes were cool and out of the pocket at times, just very ridiculous, but in a good way that made me laugh and made me enjoy the movie. But it's filled with corny moments that didn't land well with me. And even if I'm happy that South Asian, I think it's from Telugu, I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's a South Asian production. So I'm still happy that it made a buzz here on our side of the globe, but I don't think it's worthy of being there. I think it's very hyped. It's a very enjoyable but mediocre movie.
Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult to gauge it. It's definitely not trying to like cohere to any Western filmmaking rules, if you want to call them
Yeah.
that. And I don't think there's like necessarily something wrong in that. Some of my favorite movies break rules, supposed rules of filmmaking all the time. If you have a reason for it, then that's totally fine and justified. I think the reason with RRR just being fun, like the goal of it all is to be the most over-the-top thing it could ever be. And I think it pretty much succeeds at that. Most people will agree on that point. But I can see how that doesn't really justify in your mind being on that list.
Yeah. Or being as hyped as it was, I guess, but
However, we have the hottest take left to judge on.
oh,
Krit waiting
I
in the
forgot.
background.
He's been silent because he's been preparing.
Well, I've been silent because I haven't seen either of the films that you said, so I can't really comment on that. However, I'm pretty sure we've all seen the film I'm picking.
Mhm.
I think we need to get Fight Club out of here.
What?
Why is it here? Why is it there? Fight Club is at 77.
Fair?
Outrageous.
No.
Right. Outrageous. David Fincher only has one other film, I think, in the top 250, and I think it's 7 at like 80. Yeah, at 87, right? Fight Club is not even a top 3 David Fincher film, let alone a top 250 film of all time. It's insane, right? Like, okay, what are your guys' favorite Fincher films?
That would be Fight Club.
You're crazy!
No.
We're getting to the interesting part here. I
You're
wanna
crazy!
no I wanna like hear you out and then I'll add my stuff towards it.
Okay, well, first of all, objective fact, right? Not opinion, fact. The Social Network is the best David Fincher film. Okay? It's
I
fact.
still have to see that because I've watched the movie and I just don't feel that it was. But
You're on crack.
no, I am because you know what's my favorite Fincher movie? The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. That's the one.
What?
And
Yeah.
everybody's always, what do you mean?
What?
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
god.
the most tender. It's masterfully crafted. It's beautiful. It always brings me to tears. It's mwah mwah. I love it. The Social Network.
Oh, what the
I guess a
fuck
guy.
is
I guess a
happening?
guy just like throws something at the floor during his monologue when he's angry. And that's okay. Let's make the movie. You know.
This is insanity. Right.
Krit, at least now you understand how we feel about your answer and how a lot of the listeners are gonna feel.
Right. Benjamin, but right. I'm not even going to address that. That's a whole different bag of worms. Okay. I'm not even getting into that. That's a
Do
problem.
you hate it? Wait. Do you hate
That
it?
is a problem. I don't like it. I don't hate
Okay.
it, but David Fincher has made some very good fucking films.
Yeah.
Some
yeah.
very good films. And Benjamin Button is not one of them.
You know, you got that perfect essay that you receive from a student sometimes. But then everything is well written, the points are all there, but sometimes you have that tenderness, the emotion,
No,
you know?
you
And
don't.
it's decently written, and that's the Curious Case of Benjamin Button, but it's perfect. It's not decently
You're
written, it's
chatting
perfect.
shit. Wait, so, okay, wait. Just, okay, before I shut on Fight Club for a second. would you replace Fight Club with The Curious
Yes.
Case of Benjamin
Yes, I would.
Button?
But I'm biased. It wouldn't
Oh,
be. It
this
wouldn't
is-
be a rational.
This is stupid.
It wouldn't be a rational substitution. You know, I'm biased.
This is stupid.
It's okay.
This is stupid. Fight Club, right? Fight Club works twice. That's it. It works the first time if you don't know the twist, right? And then, cool, once you know the twist, you can watch it a second time, you notice some stuff, and then the third time it's just dead, right? It doesn't work again, right? Okay.
I disagree.
Second point. No, you're wrong, right?
I think I just watched it one time, so I'm. It works for
Right.
me.
It also breeds the literally me guys. The audience actively make the film worse.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's kind of I would argue that's kind of an external problem
Yeah.
that should be
That's a
discussed
cultural
separately.
thing, that's right.
sure,
But I
that's
totally
fair,
agree
that's fair.
that at least nowadays Fight Club has this. It comes with a lot of baggage and is associated with like a certain group of film fans.
Right, so yeah, all right, okay. So I can't help but like see it and cringe. But my main point, if it's not even the director's best film, I can't see how it's a top 100 film of all time. I think it's one of the most overhyped films of all time. I don't think it looks particularly well. I think it's got that 90s David Fincher look where it's just dark and and gross, which I know is kind of the vibe he's going for,
Yeah.
but also it's not fun to see. Like Seven has that same look, but it feels better. It's for some reason it works better for that story. So I would even be happy if we removed Fight Club and Seven stayed. I think Seven is better than Fight Club, even though I don't think Seven is too great either, and I don't think Seven should be there either, but here we are.
I think a lot of what we're getting here at is differences in stylization and preferences there. Because I mainly grew up in the 2000s, even though I was born in the 90s. I always kind of like attached myself to 90s culture with like skateboarding and some stuff of those kinds. And I always thought that the last decade before me was the cooler one compared to like all the current stuff culture that was going on.
Yeah.
You could put it that way, I guess. And to me, that Fight Club came out in 99. It perfectly summed up a whole decade of filmmaking, where it's the frustration with the lack of purpose. It's the gritty aesthetic you pointed out that I personally totally like. I'm pretty much in love with that aesthetic. I think the general vibe just summarized this decade of kind of darkness and despair. And I don't see it as any problem at all. I think it's a perfect piece of its time.
Yeah. A turning of the century kind of movie
Mm-hmm.
where you begin to reflect on all the the way that an individual sees himself in the system, and capitalism and yeah.
I guess to finish off the point, I think it works on additional watches, but I'm also really biased here. This is definitely one of the movies where I watched it earlier on down my, I guess, film discovery. And this was one of maybe the first movie where I realized that film could be more than just entertainment, where it could bring up deeper thoughts. And you could definitely make the argument, and I to a degree agree there nowadays, that Fight Club is very shallow with the things it tries to bring up, because it tries to tackle quite a few subjects at once. And I heard that for many people that doesn't work that well.
Well, this is my thing. This is why I brought up the fan base earlier, though, right? So, Fight Club is, in my opinion, anyway, trying to deconstruct masculinity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a criticism on what's typically seen as masculine behavior and how toxic that can be.
Mhm.
I said this in a video once actually, and I got my favorite hate comment I've ever gotten before because of that stance. But I think the fact that it's garnered such an audience that does not understand that message, I don't think the film did a good enough job at portraying that message. I think it fails at the one thing it was trying to do. I just don't think it did it so well. In fact, it did it so poorly that people have looped back around where it almost feels like propaganda for the opposite thing it's trying to preach.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see what you mean there. I guess I mainly disagree for the fact that it became just one of those infamous movies that, as I pointed out earlier, it is one of the first movies you will find if you try to look deeper into movies. So the general audience for it is just so enormous that there are gonna be a lot of idiots in there. And if a lot of lesser known films that with a similar vagueness would reach those audiences, I feel like you would have a lot of misunderstanding with many, many films, and that a lot of the baggage just came, in the case of Fight Club, with reaching those audiences. This wasn't like a blockbuster movie. This wasn't anything that was supposed to reach those audiences. That's what society turned it into, I guess.
I mean,
Yeah.
I get that to a degree, but also that's still to the detriment of the film. You should always prepare for an audience that you're not targeting for. Always.
I disagree. I disagree with that, but I agree with the sentiment that it is to the detriment of the movie. Best case scenario, you just pointed it out. That's already like a proof that to some people that's what ends up happening. I hugely disagree that you have to have a certain group of people in mind. I feel like that every filmmaker in every case should have the control to make the movie that he wants to make.
Well,
and
obviously, I'm not
despise-
saying that. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
obviously, the target for if you're trying to deconstruct masculinity, you're not trying to preach that to men that already know that. You know, like people that already know masculinity can be toxic, gain nothing from the film, right? You're trying to preach to the people that you are trying to teach, but they're the people that are misconstruing the message, so it's just not conveyed clear enough.
I guess two points on that. We have to keep in mind we're talking about a 24-year-old movie. The term toxic masculinity definitely didn't exist in
Obviously.
1999. This was all very much ahead of its time, which I give it credit for. And other than that, I can see your point. I don't think that a movie has to like bring the solution to a problem. Like you were saying that it is not trying to teach that to the people who already know that toxic masculinity is wrong. I don't think it needs to teach that toxic masculinity is wrong. It can just show it, and that's fine.
Well, yeah, I know, but like, I just feel like you're not like, if there's a movie and the point of the movie is racism bad, but you're only ever showing that to people who already know racism is bad, then what's the point? You're telling them something they already know,
I see your
and
point.
it's
I
not
see your point.
reaching any kind of audience. I mean, when you make a film with that kind of message or that kind of push behind it, you want to reach the people, you know, so to inspire change, right? That's the point. But this, like, imagine if a film came out which was a racism bad film, and then people watched it, and then there was like, yeah, racism is cool, and then they got more racist. You'd be like, what the fuck? What? How did this film fuck
Wait.
this up?
So your problem is the ambiguity of the message or
Yeah.
the aesthetic, because it's going to appeal to probably two types of crowds that stand in opposite directions. I can see that. Yeah,
So yeah, I
can
just
agree with
think
that.
it fails at delivering the message it's trying to deliver, and then also I just think it's overrated in general. Aside from that, I just feel like it's way overhyped.
That's totally fair. That's fine, and that's why we're asking the questions to get to know each other's tastes. That's what we're here for.
Benjamin Button.
Now I know that Krit.
I'm gonna go to sleep
just
thinking
gonna-
about Benjamin Button.
Yeah, maybe you'll get younger, you know? Yeah, next question. Yes?
Our next question is a film you think is great but you never want to watch again. George, take it away.
Just to preference this, I want to point out that we're talking about great movies. We're all agreeing that those are great before we start any more controversy with our takes.
Yeah.
I chose for a great movie that I never want to see again, the 2002 released Gaspar Noé, again, I guess, horror movie, Irreversible.
It is horror. I'm there with you. Go off.
I guess I will go into it a bit. Gaspar Noé is generally known as more extreme director. He doesn't shy back from showing violence, showing sexuality. And this movie is kind of one of the pinnacle movies of the so-called French New Extremity wave. During the 2000s, the French, for some reason, decided to make super fucked up movies, and I love a lot of them. I personally think Irreversible, whilst having a clear intent with a scene that happens around the middle, I'm gonna spoil it soon, it still is something I don't want to go through again.
Understandable.
So the scene in question is a 10-minute long uncut rape scene in an alley. It is super intense. You have to suffer through it for quite a while. And whilst I get the point, it has definitely a reason to be in the story. It has thematic reasons. The whole story and the story structure is supposed to, in my opinion, convey this feeling of not being able to ever take back what you did.
Yeah.
And it serves a great purpose with that, but it's a super intense watch, and I will not go through that again.
I'm there with you. I could not watch Irreversible again. That particular scene, the whole movie feels low and somber and hopeless, and when that scene hits, it's very hard to watch. Very hard to watch. And I'm not saying that I hate the movie. I enjoyed the movie for what it is, even with the shock factor. I think it has the right to be there. But yeah, it's not worth the second watch. Not at all. Crit, you haven't watched it, right?
I have not, no. But also, from the sounds of it, I don't think I want to.
Yeah.
It's a very intense movie.
It's very hard
Yeah.
to recommend.
Like,
Rape scenes
yeah.
aren't exactly my favorite. Also, yeah, I imagine that's actually really hard to recommend, right? Like, oh, you should see this film; it's really great, and then they watch it and it's got a 10-minute rape scene.
I watched this when it was movie, and I watched it with two friends of mine. All of the three of us didn't know what we're getting into. We had heard of Gaspar Noé before. I think I had seen, and one of the others had seen Climax before. So we were vaguely aware that it's an extreme director. We were not prepared for what was to come.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
but
it was late into your Gaspar Noé's journey.
not really. I think I might have started off with Climax. So Climax released in 2018,
18,
and
yeah.
I haven't been like that crazy of a movie buff before that.
You know what's weird is that so Irreversible was my first Gaspar Noé's movie.
Oh wow.
And I went searching for more of him, because I was interested in the way that he was brave or the way that he wanted to take risks with portraying such shocking scenes and themes. So I wanted to see more of that, like in a very peculiar, with a very peculiar curiosity.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting guy. I'm not sure if I would have continued to search out movies personally if that was my first Gaspar Noé.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I did. He's
Yeah,
definitely
same.
one of my favorite directors.
I think the second one I watched was Love.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's also not my favorite. So
Yeah.
congrats on continuing.
Your favorite is the latest one, right? Or Climax?
Either Climax or Vortex.
Vortex, yeah. Yeah. Climax is my favorite.
Same, by the way.
Oh, we agree. For once.
Awesome.
all this climax love that.
So that brings us to you, Bia.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Bea, do you want to go?
In the very same vein, Incendis is the movie that I wouldn't watch again, but I still think it's a masterpiece by Denis Villeneuve. So the movie, I think it's based on a stage play. I have no idea how it would be played on a stage, on a theater,
Yeah.
but it runs for 2 hours, very slow paced. So it's, I don't know if you guys are familiar. Did you watch it?
I have seen it, yeah.
Yeah. Krit, did you?
I have not, no.
Okay, I'm just going to brush over a little bit of the story. It's a story about a mother that leaves a letter to their children after she dies, so they can find their father and their lost brother. And all of this is set in Canada on the first part, and on the second part we have a story that is split into 2 timelines, where in one we have the mother living and growing up in I don't think they named the country, or they give it a different name, but it's based on the Lebanese civil war. So she's living through that and she's participating on that. And on the other timeline you have the daughter just finding out all about her mother's history and trying to find her father. And it's very intense. Very, very tragic by the end, because you're left in complete shock of the plot twist, right? It's and even there's like a similar scene. I wouldn't say it's comparable to Irreversible, but it has a scene that
It plays along the same veins, yeah.
it's very similar. But I think that what gets me the most is the way that scene is correlated to the end, and it broke me. I just very emotional, very tragic, and I wouldn't. It's hard for me to recommend this movie, but because I think it's an important watch because of the Civil War aspect and the traditions that were imposed on women in the 70s in that area. And at the same time there's like this part of the story, because at the end it's a story about a family. It's hard for me to do it. I want people to watch it, but at the same time I don't.
I think it's easier to recommend that one than
Oh,
Irreversible.
definitely.
So I can do the deed for you. You just name the names and I will recommend Incendis to them.
Okay. Because this movie, one of its main problems, it's probably the pacing as well. I like slow movies, but it's for me to recommend it to like a friend that is not used to watching slow movies, it's hard, because it's a slow movie with a very, very shocking payoff. And
Almost something that Haneke could do, now that I think of it.
yeah, now you got me thinking about Seventh Continent.
Yeah. Anyways, to lighten the moods up a bit, we have again Krit on our side, who will tell us now what movie he never wants to see again, and I'm curious to find out why.
I'm gonna make people so mad again. The film that I think is great, okay, I think it's so great, is Wall-E.
That didn't seem true. That didn't seem true. So great.
No, okay, no, right, because I have this argument all the time about Wall-E. I like Wall-E. I think it's really good. I think it's great. But that's it. I don't think it's anything better than just great. Right, I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a 7 out of 10 film. It's a great film.
You don't want to watch
I
a robot or two
couldn't
robots?
I couldn't care less about this film. I just
Jesus,
couldn't.
why?
Because listen, the first like half an hour or first half maybe is beautiful. I love it. Everything on Earth, right? Everything on Earth is great. I think it's some of the best dialogueless, animated cinema ever made. It's beautiful.
Talking about a big genre there, yeah, keep going.
Just saying.
Yeah,
In the
fair enough.
in the animated medium, it's some of the best. I'm trying to. What's the word? Not dialogueless.
Silent.
There's a word that I'm looking for and I can't think of it, but it's the best sequence without dialogue, pretty much ever in animation.
There's maybe a contestant. I'm just gonna shout that out real quick. The Red Turtle
The red turtle. Yes.
is a completely dialogue-less. It's a French movie as far as I know, but it is animated by Studio Ghibli.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the film,
It's perfect.
but I think my point still stands, honestly.
Yeah.
But then we go to space, and this film loses me entirely. Like I don't like the villain. I don't think this film needed a villain at all. I don't know why he's there, especially a twist villain, by the way, which is so odd to just throw into this random film. But doesn't need it. I hate all the stuff with the people in the chairs. Every scene with them, I just wish wasn't there. I don't like all the Scooby-Doo crap of just Wally and Eve running around the spaceship. I think the first half an hour to 40 minutes of this film is S tier Pixar animation.
Yeah.
And then everything else is C or B tier. As an accumulation, that first, 30, 40 minutes is so great that it holds the rest of the movie up to a standard where I think I can still say this is a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I never want to rewatch it because I don't ever want to sit through that second half. Ever. I don't find it that enjoyable. I'd rather, honestly, because I think Cars is a lesser film.
Cars?
But,
Cars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cars from, Pixar.
Yeah.
I think it's a lesser Pixar film. I would rather watch Cars.
Yeah, I can totally see that, how you feel about that. It's generally a big problem with movies if they can start out strong but fail to give a satisfying ending. I feel like it's always better if it continuously grows on you.
Yeah.
And to a degree, I agree. So everything on Earth is probably the best Pixar has ever done, in my opinion.
I can agree.
I think that the second half, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much split in half, actually.
Yeah.
I think that the second half can't hold up to that potential. I agree with you there. It's definitely, for me, not as bad as for you. I think there's also a bit of nostalgia playing into it, because I saw it when it came out, so I was pretty young still.
It's true. And honestly, the second half probably isn't even as bad as I think it is. But I think it's because that first half is so good that second half seems just worse than it is in comparison. Because I'm spending the entire time salty that the film just isn't as good as it was 10 minutes ago.
Couldn't live up to the expectations it sets itself.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to watch the movie again because I watched it probably when I was 13 or 14. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's been a while. I watched it like a couple of times then. I just can't remember having those feelings towards it. I I quite enjoyed going on an adventure with Wally to space and having humanity as just play portrayed in a very prophetic way, I guess.
Mhm.
As if we continue to do this, this is what's going to happen. This is how our bodies are going to look like. This is how our minds are going to be programmed to think. And I quite enjoyed that part of the movie, even the romance, the little romance with Eve and Wally, which was very charming. So I would have to watch it to see the real difference between the first part and the second part,
Mhm.
because I just didn't see it then.
I even have to. Now that you brought up the romance, I thought you were gonna mention the little side romantic story between the two humans that basically only got together due
Ugh.
to Wally, and I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's.
Yeah, like
I still have memories of the second part that I remember and I like.
take your eyes off the screen, look at each other.
I do just want to point out there is one scene in that second half that I do really like, and it's when Wally and Eve get like ejected out the ship,
Yeah, that sort of thing.
and they have like the fire extinguisher, and they're like kind of dancing in space. That's a very beautiful scene.
It is.
That is like just a small glimpse of how good that film could have been the entire time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I did have another point about Wally that I want. Oh right, just real quick, kind of off base but on base. Wally is now the first Pixar film to get a Criterion release.
True, yeah.
right?
Oh.
Thoughts, real quick on that.
Since I have like nostalgic memories towards it, and I feel like this was kind of the end of the golden era of Pixar. I don't even think that the more modern so-called masterpieces like Soul and Coco hold up to that level.
No,
So
they
to me, in my mind, Wall-E is probably might still be my favorite Pixar. A lot of nostalgia in there, so I don't mind at all. I thought it was quite cool when I saw that news.
Yeah, I might get it.
Okay, that's fair.
But would you replace it with any other Pixar movie?
But yeah, absolutely. See, this is the thing. Like, I don't mind it getting a Criterion release. I just think it's a bit crazy that it's the first Pixar to get a Criterion release. You know, because Criterion releases are supposed to be for like, you know, the most significant films, you know, ever made and important cultural, you know. I feel like Toy Story, the first Toy Story, deserved it more.
Hmm.
One, I just think it's a better film. I just think it is a better film. It's worse animated, obviously, but I think one is a better film, and it's the first fully 3D animated and feature ever. And you know, it's incredibly good to say it's the first. So I definitely felt like that should have had a Criterion release, and also Monsters Inc. and The Incredibles, just because they're better films in my opinion. But yeah.
Both of them?
Just all of them. I think Toy Story,
No, I
Incredibles,
was.
and Monsters. Yeah.
Oh, The Incredibles, both of the Incredibles.
No,
movies,
no, no,
or-
no, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Just
the first
the
one.
Incredibles. Yeah, no, the
Yeah.
Incredibles 2 is yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which brings us to our next question: a film you would love to experience again for the very first time.
Mine is very easy. It's no surprise. The movie I would like to just wipe my memory and watch it again is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, for those who don't know, is directed by Céline Sciamma. It stars Adèle Haenel and Noémie Merlan. I watched it the other day. It still stands as one of my favorite movies ever for its beautiful compositions, the way that the the music is not really used, but when it is used, it's used very purposefully and it serves the story, and it also serves the time in which the movie is set. In terms of sound production, it's very minimal but yet rich, with the fireplace and the wind and the waves. almost reaches ASMR levels. And for the story, it just builds up to one of the most well-crafted last 10, probably 10, 15 minutes of the movie. It just pays off really well. And I would like to just forget about it and watch those last 10 minutes or the entire movie again. Yeah, it's worth it. Have you guys watched it? I know George did, but what about you, Crit?
I have seen it before, but I haven't seen it recently. I have watch listed it, but I also have watch listed a million films. Because I want to rewatch it. I don't remember much about it, and I think I saw it at a time when I wasn't mentally
Prepared.
able to appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you weren't prepared to receive it. This masterpiece.
No. I think I just put it on thinking it was going to be like just, an easy watch or whatever, because I was trying to get into more European cinema, and that had just come out, and I heard like, it had really good reviews. So I was like, yeah, I'll just throw this on. And, it was 2019, so, I was about 18. So
Yeah,
I don't think I was ready for it.
And now
So
you are.
I want to rewatch. Yes.
I trust
I've grown
you.
a lot.
You can go. You can go. You can go and watch.
I'll let you know what I think on my rewatch.
I think I only watched it once so far still. Still need to get to it. I loved it a lot watching it the very first time. And since then I actually, since we already brought it up earlier, I actually got the criterion for this. So I'm looking forward to watching it again, and maybe, I'm not sure if it's on there, but maybe watch it with a Celine Sciamma audio commentary. We'll see.
Yeah. It was my second time watching it. I watched it last week, I think. And I watched it with a friend because I was bothering him, you have to watch this. You have to watch this. He didn't like it as much as I did, but at least he tried. So I'm happy. What about you guys?
George, do you want to go?
Oh, sure. I did something sneaky here. It is obviously one of my favorite movies. I wouldn't have chosen it otherwise, but it also fits thematically. I chose Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. We already talked briefly about it earlier. It's a beautiful film. It was the moment I probably realized that Charlie Kaufman is gonna be my favorite writer of all time. It was, I think, his the third movie of him that I watched, and I totally fell in love with it. And since one of the themes or ideas of this sci-fi movie is that you can erase memories, I thought there's something quite poetic to a question that implies that we're living in a world where you can erase memories, so I used that to erase Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and watch that movie again.
I can imagine you picking this and then like sitting back in an armchair twiddling your mustache thinking you were really clever. It's like,
You gotta imagine me sitting there in a suit and a glass of bourbon in my hand, pipe in my mouth.
But he was so funny. He was like, I know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Quickly on your pick, I really love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Like a lot. And I've been begging my girlfriend to watch it because she's never seen it.
Oh, wow.
And she just, every single time we sit down to watch it, I immediately turn it off. Because I see her face and I'm like, you're not ready. Mentally, you're just not prepared right now. And she always just seems really happy, and I'm like, oh, I can't do this to you.
Which is interesting. I mean, I don't want to get into it a lot now because it's like interpretation of the ending of the movie, which is a bit spoilery. I'm sure we're gonna talk about it in depth at some point. But to me, it is not a sad ending. I have quite a positive interpretation of it. So
Me too.
Okay. Just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, just on the point of me saying she's not ready. Not that it's sad, but more that it's just emotionally exhausting.
Yeah, exactly.
You experience a lot of emotions in this film.
Mm-hmm. And you also gotta, like, at least at the beginning, you should pay attention.
Yes.
It's one of those movies where it's worth fully committing to it, and I get the frustration if you're sitting next to someone and
Yeah.
you're trying to show it to them and they don't commit to it. So I get it.
And also, if they miss like the first 20 minutes of this film, it's over. You know, the rest of the film's not really gonna work for you, I don't think.
I think it would work, but it definitely adds an additional layer to it.
Also, I do think it's quite funny that Michael Gondry directed
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
I I love that like he directed this and then he went on to direct Be Kind Rewind, which is just such a different film. Like it's Eternal Sunshine is the most emotionally exhausting film you could watch.
Mm.
And then Be Kind Rewind is like such a I'm not paying attention to any of this, but it's cool kind of movie. His filmography is super random and super odd.
I think the one through line through Michel Gondry's filmography is that he's mainly a super visual guy. He bonded with Charlie Kaufman, so he obviously has the potential to like see depth in it. I don't really think it's that necessary to him. Like it's great to compare Eternal Sunshine with something like Being John Malkovich, where it's the what Spike Jonze did of a Charlie Kaufman script, and all of those three guys are close friends in real life. And you can see how Spike Jonze really can be visual, but cares himself about the depth, whilst I think Michel Gondry added the visuals and relied on Charlie Kaufman to deliver the depth. It totally works in Eternal Sunshine, but yeah, Michel Gondry is a weird guy with his filmography.
What did he make beside Eternal Sunshine?
I think he made Be Kind Rewind, Science of Sleep.
He also did Green Hornet.
Oh, he did, didn't
Green
he?
Hornet?
Oh no.
Oh.
Oh,
no.
and he also did something, the Dave Chappelle Block Party documentary.
Oh yes,
That's also Michel Gondry.
That's how I discovered him. Actually,
That's funny.
yeah, super random. Yeah, no, I watched one of his films. I think it was called The Science of Sleep. But you might have to fact check me on that because that might be a completely different guy.
And as to point out, Green Hornet is regarded as a really bad movie, and I think deservedly so. But that's story. Like, there's really interesting visual aspects to it that, again, definitely is Michel Gondry's mind.
It is really fun as well. It's a bad movie, but it is really fun.
Yeah.
He pairs himself with Leo Kara and Bong Joon-ho in Tokyo. I didn't know it was him.
Oh, yeah. That too. I forgot about that.
Yeah, interesting filmmaker.
Interesting.
It's made of very, very varying quality.
Which brings us to you, Krit.
The film I would love to experience again for the first time is Scream. So I mentioned in my little horror segment that Scream was the first horror film that I watched that I really liked. And Scream now is my favorite franchise. It just overtook Rocky. I love the Scream films so much. And that first film, as a whodunit, is top tier. It is Wes Craven at his peak. I think it's his best film. I think it's better than Nightmare on Elm Street. The mystery of that film is so interesting because the problem with a lot of whodunits is that they don't give you enough information to really come to a solid conclusion yourself. You know, it always feels like they're just holding back enough information to always keep you at bay. Whereas the Scream films don't really feel like they're doing that. They're giving you everything. Absolutely everything. You get all the details. I guess, spoilers for Scream. But the first, you know, with the whole Drew Barrymore dies, right, within the first 10 minutes. And then you find out later on, like almost immediately afterwards, that she was Stu's ex. And that's there for you. They just give that you.
True.
You know, that's not something that you find out after the twist. You know, when they're like, oh, and why did you kill blah, blah, blah? he's like, well, she was my ex. And then you're like, oh, shit. You know, they just say, oh, by the way. And
Yep.
I think what's so clever about Scream is that they give every single person equally valid motive, which is you know, it's essential for a whodunit.
Mhm.
Absolutely essential. Glass Onion did it fairly well recently in that one aspect. So everyone in Scream, you can pick and say, well, this is why you would have done it, or this is why you would have done it, you know, and it makes sense from every angle. So it's perfectly within reason to guess it. I love that. And obviously they do the twist of who it is, but also there's the added twist of it's not just one person, it's
Mhm.
two. And I remember that first blowing my fucking mind. That was crazy to me. I was like, oh no, it's Billy. But Billy was my pick. All right, I was like, it's totally Billy. It has to be. So when it was Billy, I was like, I knew it. I knew it, right? And then she runs to Stu, and then it turns out it's Stu as well. And I had to pause the movie. I paused the movie and I stood up from. I watched it at my dad's house and I stood up
Couldn't
from my
believe
desk
it.
and yeah, it blew my mind. You know, I needed to take a breather. I was like, no way. And then, but what's so great about it is, normally with a whodunit, once you figure out who done it, it's kind of like you're riding it to the end now. Like, you know, you're in the end game. You're just trying to get through it to the end. Scream isn't like that. The mystery gets solved, but the film is still just as fun afterwards.
Yeah.
Because obviously, at that point, then Billy and Stu kind of transform into different characters because they've been playing pretty much an act the entire time.
Yeah.
Especially Stu. Like Matthew Lillard as Stu is top 5 one of my favorite horror characters ever because of that last like 10 minutes where he just absolutely loses his mind. And I love that. It's just as exciting once the mystery is over, which is a big rarity in whodunits.
Yeah, it's hard to handle that.
So yeah, I would just love to experience the guessing game once again, because then obviously I went on to watch all the Screams, and you know you're constantly guessing, you know, who's who, or
Yeah.
if there's one killer or if there's two. And yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
my favorite things to do, and it's especially great in the first film.
Yep.
great.
Also, again, one of those movies that was ahead of its time. You have the whole meta understanding of movies within the movie, and I don't think that was done
yeah.
a lot before that. But nowadays, that's like the cool thing to do, you know?
Yeah. we
best
love a
part.
bit of meta these days,
Yeah.
but
To a point where the new Scream even got criticized for it, where it's like, well,
Oh, they do it.
you know, it's Scream.
yeah, that's kind of what we
Yeah,
do
that's
here.
the point.
Yeah.
Do you know though? I always found this odd, right? So, Scary Movie, not the Marlon Wayans, just the Wayans brothers films. That first one is mostly a parody of Scream, isn't it? It's a parody of a lot of films, but like the main through line is Scream.
To the point where I, as a kid, I remember, I said earlier, like, I haven't seen horror films as a kid.
Yeah.
I have seen Scary Movie with like 12 or something. And so this was my first encounter of this story, basically. And when I watched Scream for the first time, I was in shock how much I knew of the plot, because I had seen
'Cause of
Scary Movie
Scary
before.
Movie.
And it's kind of bizarre that people thought it would be a good idea to parody the horror movie that is already a parody of the horror genre.
Yeah, this was the point I was about to make. I've always found it so odd that they're parodying a parody.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Wayans brothers knew that. I don't know if they saw Scream and understood.
They failed the homework.
But
Yeah.
it's super odd.
It's a weird one, definitely.
It's very strange. Scary Movie is a funny ass film though, so fair enough, I guess. But yeah,
All right then. Your first own artistic expression regarding anything film related.
Basically, my first contact with anything to do with filmmaking was a very personal project for me that I'm now sharing to the entirety of the internet. But not the actual project, you know, just the existence of it. A couple of years ago, I went on a trip with my friends group, and I recorded some some beats here and there, as I always do, because if you put a camera on my hand, I'm gonna use it. And since I'm a very I try to be always in the present, and at the same time I try to record the present. It's a very, weird duality to be in. I used those moments that I recorded with my friends to compile a series of shots, and I edited. It was my first time editing something of that scale, and I made a short film about it. At the time, I was sensing some type of climate of departure, and I guess that video served as a way of saying goodbye. It was interesting. It was very emotional to create. It was very emotional on my part to write it, even edit it, even putting like a song, a special song that would resonate with most of them. And I'm very happy that it was well received. And I still get some quotes of mine being quoted back to me, so that's funny. So yeah, that's my first, I wouldn't say artfully, but more like more towards filmmaking experience that I had. Why?
What, we're supposed to follow that up, are we? Right, cool. Yeah.
What is it?
I guess mine is a really recent one when I made my first YouTube video in 2021, which is, it was about 2 years ago, like exactly. It was a video on Tick Tick Boom, because that had just came out and I adored it. And I'd wanted to start a YouTube channel for a while, so I did. And I ended up making 2 videos. One on Tick Tick Boom, one on Creep, which I mentioned earlier. And then I kind of quit doing YouTube. I had crappy software and a crappy PC, so I didn't really feel motivated to do it. So about a year later, I deleted both those videos and I rebooted my channel, and I've started it again. And I'll do 2 videos a week, which is very stressful, and I made a massive error in doing that schedule, and I'm still doing it now, so that's fun. So it was making a YouTube video, which I have since deleted.
But you made it work. You made it work. Wait. Pause. Okay. Why would you say it's crap? I think it's great that you got the motivation and, the courage to just go ahead and
Thank
do
you.
it.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. I mean, like, even considering you are the only one giving an answer that actually relates to the thing we're doing right now.
True.
You're in some ways you're the most
Yeah.
trained on talking about film of all of us.
And yet I
So-
have the
True.
worst opinions, so that's fun.
No, there are no bad opinions, okay? No
I
bad
mean, Benjamin
opinions.
Button, but
Shut up.
All right, to bring this to a wholesome note, I guess my first artistic expression regarding anything film, I am actually not sure. It could be either of 2. They were both around when I was 5 or 6 years old. My best friend at the time had really early a phone that could film, so like really shitty, probably 144p Nokia phone camera. I remember we did some just sketches, weird stuff, super random. It's probably, you could consider it internet humor just without us knowing that it was, but super weird sketches. I remember they made his little sister laugh, so I guess we were successful. And
Yeah.
the other one would be around the same time. I have still to this day no idea how I found out how stop motion was made at that age. I must have seen like some video thing on TV about some probably Nightmare Before Christmas or something. However, I knew how it was made, and I got my hands on the phone of my mother at some point, which was also a shitty Nokia camera, and I remember sitting in the living room and creating shitty stop motion videos with my Playmobil characters at the time. I sadly don't have any of those videos anymore. I wish I
No,
had.
wanted to watch them
Damn,
now.
I was literally just about to ask you
I wish
if
I
you
had.
could show us.
Yeah. They wouldn't have been great because I didn't have any tripod. And as we know, moving a camera in between stills of a stop motion will result in a very jittery image. I, over time, advanced. I remember finding out a technique where I aligned a few books and I could like sit down the phone in the same spot, about the same
Yeah.
spot roughly every time. So I made improvements, and they were not very good because I couldn't make actual stills and then play it, so I had to press record and pause real quick every time.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the idea that for some weird reason 6-year-old me decided it would be a good idea to not only play with my Playmobil but actually record stories about it.
You made the original Playmobil movie. How does that feel?
What a pioneer.
Honestly, I mean, I don't know if you've actually seen the Playmobil movie, but it sucks. So yours is probably the best Playmobil movie ever made.
Maybe that was mine. Someone just found the phone.
What, they leaked it.
And yeah, they took full responsibility of what I created.
Wow, they got like, was it Daniel Radcliffe that was in that movie? Jesus. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that watched the Playmobil movie. Like,
Yeah, I didn't even know that there was one. I thought you
Yeah,
were making
not
a
even
joke on the
yeah,
Lego
just-
movie.
I heard about it, but
it's got Anya Taylor-Joy and Daniel Radcliffe in it.
Crazy.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Didn't know.
and it's really bad. Whoa, it's got 18% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Damn.
That's an
Yeah,
achievement.
Jesus, man. I thought it was bad. I didn't think it was that bad. Anyway, yeah. No, you made the only good Playmobil movie. Well done.
Maybe I did. I don't remember the plot, to be honest.
I mean, this one kind of had no plot, so, you know, if it had one at all, you still step up.
I remember mine had a giraffe in it. So I
Oh,
got that
yeah.
going.
Top tier. More,
Which brings us.
Wait there, can I just say, more movies need giraffes. Okay, Playmobil or not, giraffes
Yeah.
are underrepresented.
I just recently rewatched the Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which has a giraffe in it. So
Yeah,
Just that.
sick.
Why do you have so much love for giraffes?
I don't know. They're
What's
cool,
up?
innit? They got long necks.
Long necks.
I don't know what you want from me. They're just cool, bro. They got big ass necks.
which brings us, those big ass necks bring us to the most memorable theater experience. Krit, you want to go first?
Oh, I get to go first. Yay. All right, yeah. So my most memorable theater experience was seeing Avengers Endgame opening night. If anybody knows me, they know that I don't watch the MCU anymore. I'm very much off that boat. However, growing up, you know, because when the first Iron Man came out, I was about 8 years old. So I was in prime demographic to see these films. You know, I'd really loved the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films. So the MCU was like, it was everything. I would go and see a lot of them with my dad and then eventually my friends. I went with a particular group of friends to go and see Avengers Infinity War. And it was one of the best theater experiences up until that point. I thought it was just a fantastic experience. We really, really wanted the next part. And then, you know,
You had to wait.
yeah. And I all those friends I didn't speak to for a while after that. I think it was for about a year. You know, we did that and then I didn't speak to them for a while. And, you know, we didn't fall out or anything. We just didn't really speak. But Endgame was about to come out. It was the week before Endgame. And one of them messaged me and he was like, do you want to go and see Endgame? So and so and so was coming. I was like, absolutely. I went to his house the night before. No, 2 nights before, rather. I'm stupid. And we binged as many MCU films as we could.
Damn.
Yeah, we had all the DVDs and we went through so many MCU films. And we spent the whole, 2 nights just theorizing about what's going to happen in Endgame. And we,
No wonder you got sick of it.
I was really into the hype. And then we
Yeah.
went opening night. It was electric. Every single moment in that film, there was a reaction. There was a lot of tears, and there was a lot of cheering. And you don't really see that in the cinema, especially not in the UK. We have like etiquette. You don't really, even in a comedy, don't laugh too loud. We tried to be very respectful of each other. But in that cinema, nobody cared. If they were crying, they were sobbing. If they were cheering, they were really going for it. And it was incredible. Endgame felt like the perfect summation of my entire childhood. Because I had been seeing these films since I was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
And by the time Endgame came out, I was an adult. I was 18. So it was like a decade of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it just wrapped up incredibly well. Because it's a good film.
It is.
It's not Citizen Kane, but for what it's trying to be, it's absolutely perfect at it.
Yeah.
I couldn't have thought of a better way to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's me with Harry Potter at the time. It was, just the build up of my entire childhood. And when I watched the last one on the cinema, I just got home and I cried and cried and cried because it was over.
Yeah, I did that too.
I can definitely relate to that to a certain degree. When the first Iron Man came out, I was still very much a boy and very hyped for this iron-suited man just flying around and doing cool shit. I was here for that. It was awesome. I grew out of it at a certain point, so I wasn't really part of this whole thing anymore when Infinity War and Endgame came around. But I, since then, got to it, and I definitely understand why it has that praise. It's an incredible feat to bring such a conclusion to, what was it at the time, 20 movies or something?
Yeah.
With that many characters, and bring them together and make still a cohesive story. I think Endgame has a few issues pulling it off compared to Infinity War. I think Infinity War is the better one. But
I do too.
they are definitely great for that. I was wondering, just real quick, because you said in the UK the people are generally very composed in the theater. Do you often go to like premieres or maybe film festivals or any of that kind?
No, I don't actually. I try to avoid it.
Okay, interesting. Because in Austria, I have the feeling that for the most part, people also don't really react in the cinema a lot. But if you go to a premiere, if you go to a film festival, to any like special screening, and it's somewhat filled, like the crowd is somewhat filled, then you definitely get those crowd reactions.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, no, I try to avoid anything that might have a lot of people in
Yeah,
it.
same.
Generally, I don't love crowds, but Endgame was one of those exceptions where I felt like I needed to see it opening night because I just couldn't risk having that movie spoiled for me.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to be in that room when everyone else experienced it for the first time. Ah, right. Cool. Spoilers. I remembered. This is the film I wanted to talk about spoilers for. I have never seen the internet come together in a way that they did for Endgame.
For spoiler protection?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I saw so many spoilers for Infinity War, for No Way Home, for a million movies. Because even though I saw it opening night, so spoilers wouldn't have bothered me. I didn't see any spoilers for Endgame for at least 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, I remember that.
The internet was all very uniform, which is really special.
Yeah, I remember definitely browsing through Reddit at the time, and there were like weeks of just memes about the non-existent of Endgame memes.
Yeah.
The subreddits were all unanimously agreeing, and everyone was just working together to get rid of any spoilers about Endgame. It was fascinating.
Yeah, I remember those. Now that you talk about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really weird. It was really weird.
Hmm.
Anyway, yeah. You guys wanna say yours?
Yeah. So for me, I actually, now that you were speaking about Avengers Endgame and talking about the crowd, I thought of I thought of one movie that I went to the cinema, and it was a pleasant experience to watch with a crowd. And normally I don't like crowds because people laugh uh, when I don't find things funny, and it's just there's like we're not in sync. Okay, I'm not in sync with the crowd, so it just brings my experience a little bit down. But there was this one movie called Twilight Part 2. Okay, it has a different name. Um, it's the last
Twilight
movie.
Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Yeah, it's like that moment. Have you guys watched it? The
Oh,
last movie?
absolutely. I love those films.
Sometime, yeah. I don't even remember what you wanna spoil.
Maybe you do. There's like one moment where everyone just goes, ah! They scream. The little girls, they're like, I can't believe this. They've done this to this character.
Is it relating to something Jacob does somewhat unwillingly?
No,
No,
it's
I know what you're talking about. I
Carlisle.
know what you're
Okay.
talking about.
That's what I had to think
It's with
about.
It has to do
Carmyle.
with Carlisle.
Yeah, Carlisle, that's it, yeah.
the father to Edward.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone is raging, like, I can't believe it. I see people crying, reaching for tissues, and I'm there with them because I couldn't believe it as well. I gasped. And
Bro, I was laughing so hard when that happened.
I didn't see anyone laughing, but
It would just be me at the back.
yeah, but my first answer was Avatar, the first one. I watched it on 3D again with my father. My father took me. It was just amazing. I remember dodging a bomb. Okay, it was a new experience. It was cinema was revitalized. It showed me that cinema is a special, very special medium, and that it can transport you to a completely different world. Watching it in 3D was very, very special.
Real quick on that. Did you see the most recent Avatar in cinema?
Yeah.
You said it's so enthusiastic. Yeah. Jeez,
Also,
okay, I won't bring it up again.
I didn't mean it. It just came off that way, okay? I didn't mean it, I swear. I liked the movie a lot. It was beautiful. I don't know what James Cameron like puts in his tea to just come up with these ideas to, let me gather this special effects team and just do this beautiful, unprecedented movie. It's amazing. I watched it in IMAX 3D.
Good.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
you did well.
One thing before I get to my answer, I think it's interesting. I am apparently the only one here who likes big crowds with movies. It might just be that I found the right kind of crowd for me. So like I usually frequent the same few cinemas. They are all in original sound, so no dubbing, which is like a big thing in German-speaking nations, because the German dubbing industry is, as far as I know, the biggest in the world. So we get basically everything in dub, and people are used to it to the degree where most people won't ever watch something if it isn't dubbed. That leads to those few cinemas, that few screenings with like the original sound and subtitles, basically just being filled with people who are really into film. I might have just found my perfect niche to surround myself in, because I generally vibe with like the reactions of the crowds that I'm in.
No, I'm just disgustingly antisocial.
I get teenagers like I they come off school and they decide I'm going to the cinema.
Oh,
And
I always go to the cinema at like 1 p.m.
yeah, now I'm doing that, but before it was insufferable. They talk during the movie. They're with their phones, eating so loudly, and
Yeah, you wouldn't find any of those in like the screenings I go to. I guess that's just like a filter for that.
it depends on the crowd and it depends on the movie. For example, I watched Avengers Endgame also in the theater, and it was a very nice experience.
Which brings us to my answer, which is also a movie that a certain kind of people were very excited about that it's finally coming out. I gave the answer of the Austria premiere for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Lucky.
For a bit of context, the movie has at that point already been out in the US probably since at least half a year. Austria was even slow within Europe. I was actually one of the few lucky people in the crowd of the Austria premiere who has seen it already. I made a road trip through Germany maybe 3 weeks earlier or something like that, which lined up perfectly with the German release. So I had already seen it and was so looking forward to like dragging along all my friends into the cinema. And yeah, this was bonkers. This was like with 250 people, all super film nerds who already knew this was supposed to be this big new thing. Everyone was aware of like the ratings it got from other countries, the hype it
Yeah.
had worldwide. Everyone was so excited to finally be there, finally sit there. And I don't think I ever had a screening with that many crowd reactions, and I was fully on board. I was there from minute one till the end. But it was a really neat festival crowd where it's also like in the slower moments, in the calmer moments. It was silent. There was no popcorn scrambling
Yeah.
or anything. It was everyone was fully in it and you could really feel it, and the vibe just elevated the whole experience to another level.
I think that Everything Everywhere All at Once is again being screened in Portugal. I think. I'm not sure. I would love to watch it in the cinema. I think it's one of my biggest regrets in life that I didn't watch it in the cinema, because that movie is just. I want to make a party in the theater. In fact, I want to bring all the friends that I can to for them to watch it, because it's just amazing.
Are we invited or?
Hell nah.
Oh, fair enough.
Makes sense. I wouldn't invite me either. Since we're wrapping up the questions now, it's time for us to announce the 3 movies in question to discuss in the next episode. So if you want to prepare, watch the following. Our new current movie is Babylon, the 4th feature film by the American writer-director Damien Chazelle. It is his biggest budget production so far, and an epic scale look behind the curtains of Hollywood at the end of the silent film era, starring Diego Calva, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie.
We'll also be talking about Singing in the Rain, since it's a notable influence of Babylon, directed by Gene Kelly and Stanley Donen, a musical that is also about the transition from the silent era to the talking picture era, starring Debbie Reynolds, Donald O'Connor, and of course, Gene Kelly.
We are also going to talk about La La Land, a movie that came out in 2016. It was directed by Damien Chazelle, his follow-up to the successful Whiplash, and it follows the story of 2 people who find love in a city where you go to follow your dreams, Los Angeles, the great Hollywood. That would be the subject of his most recent one.
If you don't want to get spoiled for these movies, you have 2 weeks to prepare before the next episode comes out. We are George,
Krit,
Bia,
and you are listening to €3 per movie.